This week on B.Hooked Crochet, I've teamed up with my friends over at Yarnspirations to teach you how to crochet their Harvest Pumpkins. All right, let's see how it's done. So no matter what size pumpkin we're working on, the first 5 rounds are going to be the same. So let's start off on round number 1. We're going to create a slip knot. Place that loop on our hook. And then we're going to chain 2. The next thing we want to do is locate our first chain, so the one that's right there next to that slip knot, and make 10 single crochets in that space. So I just am working under 1 loop of that chain, and that's perfectly fine. And you can see I'm rotating my piece as I work through these single crochets because now I'm converting it to a round at this point. We started with those 2 chains and we're making it into our first round. Now when you get to the end of your round, your piece looks something like this, and we just need to find that first single crochet that we made. And I like to look for the V up at the top. That makes it a lot easier for me to distinguish the first stitch. So you'll just find the first V. It should be right next to where you end. We're going to join with the slip stitch there. So I want to make sure I'm catching both loops of that stitch. And then slip stitch. To begin round number 2, we're going to chain 1 and then make 2 single crochets in the first stitch. So I'm counting where my chain is coming from as my first stitch here, and we'll just make 2 single crochets in the same space. And then we're going to work 2 double crochets in the next stitch. And alternate that again. We'll do 2 single crochets in the next stitch, followed by 2 double crochets in the next. We're just going to repeat that until we get to the end of the round. When you've made it to the end of your round, your last stitch will have 2 double crochets, and then we're going to join with a slip stitch to the first single crochet. So this first stitch right here, just insert your hook under both loops of that stitch and then slip stitch the round together. Moving on to round number 3, we're going to start off this round by chaining 1 and then make a single crochet in the same space that your chain 1 is coming from, so in the first stitch. Now in the next stitch, we're going to make 1 single crochet and 1 double crochet, all in that same stitch. This is going to start our stitch pattern repeat for this round. Next, we're going to make 1 double crochet into the next stitch. And 2 double crochets into the next. Followed by 1 single crochet in the next stitch. So that was our stitch repeat for this round. We want to repeat that 3 more times. So we're going to start with the 1 single crochet and 1 double crochet in the next stitch. That is the beginning of our repeat. So 1 single crochet, 1 double in the next stitch, followed by 1 double crochet in the next stitch, 2 double crochets in the next, and then lastly a single crochet in the next stitch. So we just need to repeat that now 2 more times. We're going to pick up near the end of the round and we'll work through those last few stitches together. Now when you have 3 stitches remaining for this round, we're going to go through basically the same repeat again. On that third to last stitch, we're going to make a single crochet and a double crochet in the same space. Followed by a double crochet in the next stitch, which is the second to last, and then 2 double crochets into the last stitch. Now to finish off the round, we're going to find our first stitch of the round, which is a single crochet. We're going to join with a slip stitch there. At the end of round number 3, we want to have a total of 30 stitches, so you just want to double check, make sure you're on the right track before moving forward, and just notice how our piece kind of looks like a little flower at this point. Those single crochets are shaping our pumpkins. So moving on now to round number 4, we're going to chain 1 and make 1 single crochet into each of the first 2 stitches. So the first stitch being where my chain 1 is coming from, and then the next stitch, which is a single crochet. We're going to make a single crochet there. And this is where our stitch pattern repeat begins. We're going to make 2 double crochets into the next stitch, followed by 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Then we'll make 2 double crochets in the next stitch, and we'll finish up the repeat with 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, which are both single crochets. So that's our stitch repeat for round number 4. We're going to repeat that a total of 3 more times. So basically we're covering this little bump here and then here and here. So go ahead and finish the repeat around until you get to this last section. We'll talk about how to finish up round 4. And in the last double crochet of this little section, we're going to make 2 double crochets there. So we're increasing, making it a little bit bigger. And now since we're at the end of our round, we're going to find our first single crochet, which is right here, and join with the slip stitch there. Now at the end of round number 4, we'll have a total of 40 stitches. Just double check and make sure you're on the right track, and we'll move on to round 5 next. To begin round 5, we're going to chain 1 and make 1 single crochet into the first 2 stitches. So the first one is where our chain is coming from. We'll single crochet there and single crochet in the next stitch. And just always keep in the back of your mind that when we make single crochets, we're doing so in the single crochets from the round before. Now here is where the stitch pattern repeat begins for round number 5. We're going to make 1 double crochet in the next stitch, and then we'll make 2 double crochets into the next stitch, now make 1 double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches, and we'll make 2 double crochets in the next stitch, which is the last double crochet of this little section here. And we'll finish up the repeat with 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, which are those 2 single crochets. So now we're just going to repeat that 3 more times until we get to the end of the round, or near the end of the round. We'll pick up there and we'll work through the last few stitches together. When you've made it to the end of your round, you'll locate your first single crochet from this round and you'll join with a slip stitch there. And at the end of round number 5, we'll have a total of 50 stitches. So we're at the point now in the pattern where things are going to start to be a little bit different depending on the size you're working on. I'm demonstrating the small pumpkin here, so I'm going to go on to round number 6. It's located at the top of page 2. You'll see it under the section called Small Pumpkin Only. And we're going to work through round 6 here. Now, if you're making the medium or the large size pumpkin, you're just going to find those subheadings. So actually the next paragraph is the medium and large pumpkins. You'll see the instructions for round 6. So just know that we're demonstrating the small pumpkin here, and to create those larger sizes, you'll now just refer to your pattern to get the specific stitch patterns for each one of these rounds. All right, so moving on to round number 6 for the small pumpkin, we're going to chain 1 and single crochet into the first 2 stitches. So the one where my chain is coming from, and single crochet into the next. Now I'm going to make 1 double crochet into each of the next 8 stitches, and they should all be double crochets that I'm working into. Then once I get finished with that section, my next 2 stitches should be single crochets from the previous round. I'm going to make 1 single crochet into each one of those 2 stitches. And that's our repeat. So round number 6 for the small pumpkin, we're no longer increasing. We're just following the pattern. So basically making 1 double crochet into each double crochet and making a single crochet into each of the 2 single crochets. So go ahead and finish up round number 6. We'll meet back up at the end and talk about what to do next. When you've made it to the end of your round, you'll locate your first single crochet and join with a slip stitch there. Now moving on with the pattern, what we need to do is repeat round 6 a total of 5 more times. That is for the small pumpkin size. Again, if you're working with the medium or large, you'll just follow the instructions through the increase at this point, which is where we are now, and then you'll follow through with the repeat for the sides. So no matter what size pumpkin you're working on, you're going to increase for a certain number of rounds, then you're going to not increase anymore, and then we're going to decrease, and that's going to be the overall shape. We're sort of breaking it into 3 sections. So if you're working on the small one right along with this tutorial, go ahead and work round number 6 5 more times, and then we'll have a look at those decreases. Once you get through the midsection of the pattern, your pumpkin now looks something like this, and we're ready to start the decreasing to shape the other part of the pumpkin. Well, we have 4 rounds of decreasing for the pumpkin, and I want to direct your attention to page 2 of the written instructions. Near the middle of that page, you'll see the heading, All Sizes First Round. That's where we're picking up next. Now we're going to begin this first round of decreasing with a chain 1 and 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. So in that first one with our chain and into the next single crochet. And here's the stitch repeat for this round. We're going to make 1 double crochet in the next stitch, and then we're going to double crochet 2 together. So just focus your attention on the next 2 stitches. We're going to turn them into 1 with this stitch. We're going to yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch and pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through 2. Now leave that there, yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and now yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. So that is a double crochet 2 together, and we've decreased by 1 stitch there. Now we're going to make 1 double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. And then we'll double crochet 2 together once again. Now the last 2 stitches of the repeat are a single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches, which are the single crochets from the previous round. So we just want to repeat that a total of 3 more times, and then we'll work through the last few stitches together. You'll double crochet 2 together over your last 2 stitches, and then join with a slip stitch to your first single crochet. Now at the end of this first round of decreasing, we're going to have a total of 40 stitches. Moving on to round number 2 of the decrease section, we're going to start with the chain 1 and then single crochet into each of the first 2 stitches. And now for our stitch pattern repeat, we're going to double crochet 2 together. And then 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And double crochet 2 together. And then make 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches in those single crochets. Now you'll just repeat that until you get to the end of the round. So what I've done off camera here is I have finished crocheting round number 2 all the way to the end. I've joined with a slip stitch to my first single crochet, and we're ready to pick up on the 3rd round. Now just a quick note, the pattern says that at this point you can go ahead and stuff it. There's actually quite a large hole there, so I'm going to wait until I get to the end of round number 4 before I start stuffing my pumpkin. So round number 3 begins with a chain 1, and then we're going to single crochet in the first stitch. Now the repeat for this round begins with a single crochet 2 together. The concept is the same, but we have just a little bit of a difference in motion since we're working with single crochet rather than double. We're going to insert our hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, and leave that there. Then insert your hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through all 3. Next, we're going to make 1 double crochet in the next stitch. And then double crochet 2 together. And then 1 single crochet in the next stitch. So we're going to repeat that a total of 3 more times until we get to the end of the row, and then we'll work our last stitches as normal. When you've made it to the end of your round, you'll find your first single crochet, which will be right next to the single crochet 2 together. There, we're going to join with the slip stitch to our first single crochet. And at the end of round number 3, we're going to have a total of 20 stitches. You can go ahead and double check and make sure you're on the right track before moving on to the 4th and final round of the decrease section. Round number 4 begins with a chain 1, and we're going to single crochet 2 together 10 times. That's going to leave us with a total of 10 stitches remaining, and that's it. That's going to wrap up the body of our pumpkin. When you've made it to the end of your round, you'll join with the slip stitch to your first stitch, and then we can fasten off. We want to leave us a nice long end. Just trim that off and pull the long tail through the loop on your hook. The next thing we're going to do is take our polyfill or our stuffing and stuff it. Now that we've finished the pumpkin, the next thing we need to crochet is the stem. There's just 2 rows to this. We're going to start with a slip knot in our contrasting color, and then make 10 chains. For row 1, we want to just turn our chain over so that we can see the back bumps of each one of the chains. We're going to find the second chain from the hook. So we have our first one right here and our second one right there. We're going to make a single crochet in the second chain from the hook and in each of the remaining chains. So we'll have a total of 9 single crochets at the end of row 1. For row number 2, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to work with single crochet stitches again, but this time we're going to work in the back loop only of every single stitch. So I like to not count my chain 1 as a stitch and find the first stitch looking at it from the top. Now I'm going to locate that back loop only, insert my hook there, and single crochet. And repeat that for each one of the stitches. Again, you'll have a total of 9 single crochets. And now we're just going to repeat row 2 until our work measures about 1.5 inches from our starting edge here. Once your stem measures approximately 1.5 inches, we can go ahead and fasten off. The next thing we want to do is fold our stem in half and just take our darning needle. We're going to seam up the top and the sides. I'm going to go ahead and seam up the side edge and then close up this end here. So just work your tail underneath each one of the stitches, first joining it to the other side. and then just work your needle underneath each stitch from one side over to the next. Once you have that sewn up, then just go ahead and take what end you have remaining and then just weave it in. So I'm just going under a row of stitches down the side. And trim off that tail. Now the last thing you'll do is place your stem in the opening in the top of your pumpkin. I've just stuffed that other end in there. I don't actually have to weave that in. And then take your long tail from your pumpkin and thread that on your darning needle. And then we're just going to stitch the stem in place. And you can be a little bit creative. If you want a really long stem, you'll stitch it up towards the bottom. If you want one that's a little bit shorter, just squish it down in there and then stitch along the middle. That's actually what I'm going to do for this one. Then once you have that nice and secure, just take the end that you have remaining and weave it in along the seam.